Happy holidays. This is such an exciting episode. I love talking all things Broadway, whether it's Gregory Maguire in the Ivory Tower Boiler Room or David Armstrong, so any musical theater deep dive and a way to bring it into a queer novel is exciting. So I am joined with Chad Beguelin, got the name right, is a six-time Tony Award nominee. His Broadway works include The Prom, Disney's Aladdin, Elf, and The Wedding Singer. He also co-wrote the screenplay for The Prom, which is available on Netflix. I've watched it a lot. Chad is a graduate of NYU's Tisch School of the Arts graduate dramatic writing program. He currently lives in Bridgehampton, Manhattan, the back and forth with his husband Tom and their rescue dog Tucker, which sounds like a really nice life. So, hi, Chad, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
So I just wanted to dig right into, the phenomenon that is all things Wicked, holding space, you know. I'm just curious whether Wicked, like as a musical, interacted at all with any of your works. Like if you remember that like 2003 year and like what was happening in your life.
Well, the incredible thing about Stephen Schwartz, who wrote Wicked, he uh, was a wonderful and still is a wonderful mentor to Matthew Sklar and me. And I remember we were in the ASCAP workshop that he ran, and it was invaluable. And then when we were in previews for The Wedding Singer, I said, "You've got to come. You've got to give me notes. You've got it." So he came. He saw an early preview, and then the next day we met for lunch. And I walked in. I sat down at the table, and I was like, "Help me! Help me!" He's like, "All right, let's take a few breaths here. Let's have some small talk, and then we'll get into the notes for the show." So I'm thrilled that not only Stephen is having such great success because he is a mentor to so many people, so many writers, and I'm also thrilled that it's a show with very sort of important messages for us, especially now about acceptance and I'm thrilled. And I took my husband to see it, and my husband hates going to the movie theater because he feels trapped if he doesn't like it. And I said, well, I'm going without you, either way. And when it was over, he turned to me. He's like, now I have to wait for part two. So you'd even, converted a, person that hates going to the movie theater, so just so thrilled about all of it.
Yeah, and do you feel like Steven Schwartz, like something I always talk to people about is I'm a fan of Pippin so much, and Pippin has such a dark political undertone. So like it kind of makes sense that Steven Schwartz has always been dealing with Hunchback of Notre Dame. Wait, did he do Hunchback of Notre Dame?
Yeah, I did the
Oh,
lyrics.
okay. I always get nervous when I bring up a Disney. I always think it's Alan Menken.
Right. No, it was
But
Alan and Steven together.
Okay. And then he also did Godspell. So like it is interesting because it makes sense that Wicked has that like the illusion of the person who thinks that they're helping others and like no one has seen the wizard and it just becomes this whole like sheep in wolf's clothing type of narrative. So yeah, I feel like Stephen has always been kind of doing that, but maybe people didn't always associate Wicked when it was on Broadway with that layer of the politics.
Yeah, I think, Steven is such a deep artist and writer and composer. I think you couldn't put a gun to his head and he couldn't write something frivolous if he tried. I think he is so feels so deeply, and that's what makes his musical so special.
Yeah, well, one of my favorite musicals is actually The Wedding Singer. And I remember it was touring and it somehow ended up in Harrah's in the
Oh
late
yeah. Oh yeah.
2000s. Okay, you remember.
Oh yeah.
So
I was there.
Oh, you were? Okay, so I
Oh
grew
yeah.
up in South Jersey, so I saw it was like that had played Hairspray. I wish they brought back the musicals in Atlantic City, but that's my own
Yeah.
soapbox. There was a time when they actually premiered musicals in Atlantic City.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, so we'll see. Who knows what's gonna happen there? But I just remember the Saturday night in the city. I loved that like flash dance spectacle of the water, you
Oh God,
know, coming down, and all of the songs were so good. And I feel like the Wedding Singer's having a moment. Like there's a lot of Gen Z thirst for it to come back as a
great,
revival.
great. I mean, funny thing about the Flashdance water sequence, the second preview. that we tried out in Seattle, the water came down so hard that it washed Amy Spanger's wig off. And it fell to the floor like a wet raccoon. And like the trooper she was, she just grabbed it and she smacked it on her head. She hit her final pose. And that was like, it was hilarious. But that never happened again. We were like, okay, we got to get that worked out.
Did she actually? Because I was always wondering, because of all of that water, she took her mic off, right? Or
So yeah, her last note was recorded, pre-recorded, so that because she was getting doused in the face with water. So yeah.
yeah, water and fake blood, like Carrie, have never had a good time
No.
on stage. But
Yes.
I also love there's a podcast called That's a Gay Ass Podcast. And you can curse here, Chad, just
Oh, okay, good.
if
Well,
you're wondering.
can you hear my dog crying and making he's making a noise. Anyway,
I
sorry.
can't, but I love like animal noises on the podcast. But so Laura Benanti, I've always just like respected her art. And I feel like, I sent you this clip, but when she just said she hopes that you and Matthew never thought that she was like critiquing your work, like how did that make you feel?
Um, how do I navigate this bear trap of a question?
Okay.